really work through feelings well. So this is a video about working through grief, working through feelings, I guess. But mostly just a life update, I guess. So keep watching. Alright, hi friends, my name is Jasmine. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new, welcome. Today's video is speaking to recent events in my life. With family, we recently lost our grandfather, father, patriarch person in our family, and this one was actually a tough loss for me. I'm trying to process that he's not really here anymore. I'm trying to process all of those things. He was my last living grandparent on my mom's side, or maternal grandfather, and I never really knew my paternal grandparents. So I grew up with my maternal grandparents my whole life. And what's crazy is, I don't know, I'm trying to process, like, when, something just changes and you're just like, okay. And like, I didn't see my grandfather all the time. Holidays and all of those things, but like, I don't know, like, it was just kind of like, what's understood don't need to be explained, And it was very much challenging. So last year I actually experienced 4 deaths. By the time August had come around, 4 people in my life had passed. My baby cousin, she only lived to be a few days old. So I think just in general, just that whole is just kind of like, whoa. And our family, God really graced our family through that. And especially her parents through that. Such an incredible testimony of God's faithfulness to even her parents. And then St. Patrick's Day, my high school best friend and my grandmother actually passed. And so with my grandma, it was sad and it was tough, but it was like, she had been sick. So she had a stroke, back in 2015. So she hadn't been herself for years. And so it was kind of just like, well, you've been hurting and I'm just happy you're not hurting anymore. And then my high school best friend, she actually was killed. And so that was kind of surreal. Processing that. And then my high school best friend's funeral was on the same day as my grandmother's funeral, so I couldn't go to her funeral. And it was just like, that was kind of surreal too. And then in May, another best friend of mine, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then 3 months later in August she passed, and she was only 30. So it was just like this overwhelming processing through of grief, and it was so tough. I'm just not like a let me sit by your bedside while you pass type of person. I'm not I want to come up and do a visitation. I'm very much a person that's like, no, we'll just do a cremation, plant a tree. Let's not dig up the ground for this. Let's not pay for what. Like, I'm in my mind, I don't process paying for something. And if you are this type of person, I am in no way bashing or saying you're stupid or talking down to you, of course, because first of all, that's not what this channel is about. And second of all, I get it. People need closure. People need, right? They want to see their loved one off and the best and all of those things. So I understand. But in my mind, I'm very like efficient and like frugal in some capacity. So it's kind of just like, but we're burying all of this, right? And so even with my grandmother, it didn't really hit me until they were lowering her casket into the ground. But she had been sick for so long, it was kind of just like, this is not who I grew up with. And so with my grandfather this past weekend, it was harder because he was healthy up until like he was independent up until the last couple weeks of his life. And again, last living grandparent, it's like a process. And then I think through like, oh man, like when I get married, I'm gonna have to, you know, accommodate my grandfather, get him to and from the ceremony. He's gonna meet my grandchildren, or meet my children, so his great grandchildren, and that's not happening. And so, you know, just processing the shift in that capacity, in that space, is challenging. And then even with like grief in general, like I'm overly dramatic, I'm emotional, I am expressive, I think out loud, I'm extroverted, ambiverted, but really extroverted. But when it comes to like feelings and like how I work through things, like I'm transparent. Oh yeah, I've been through this, I've worked through this. Like, oh man, I got through this, so like you can get through it too, right? Super encouraging. But when it comes to like actually working through things in real time, I process internally. I think in my mind, I don't like to be on the inside of oh, are you okay? Are you good? And again, I know that all of those sentiments come from people who care, and come from people who mean well, and come from people who love me, and all of those things. And I'm grateful for that. I would be upset. One of my friends the other day, I was getting just the influx of text messages and the reach outs regarding my grandfather. And I was telling her, I was just like, oh, so many messages, it's so hard. And she was like, yeah, but you would be mad if nobody reached out to you. And I was so grateful for her and her saying that, because it was so sobering. And it also was like, yeah, like what you complaining for, bro? And so I was grateful for that. But I still struggle with crying in public. I'll cry by myself, feeling. I have to force myself to feel sometimes. I like being a support for someone else. So like Enneagrams, I'm like in love with Enneagrams right now. Enneagram 7, right? Super jack of all trades, energetic, life of the party, all of those things. But I'm also a 2. So the 2 in me loves to care for others, loves to feel needed, loves to help, loves to support. And so I like doing that. So when it's on the other side, I'm kind of just like, this is weird. And so it's just definitely been very challenging to think through. And I don't know, I'm sad. I am still processing. Like everything shifted. Like where my mom grew up, a lot of our family would always make an effort to get up there, obviously, to see my grandfather, see my grandparents. And so like we don't have that pull to my mom's childhood home as intensely as we did. And so that changes. He was the patriarch of our family. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just so many things, and now things are shifting, and roles are kind of not really shifting, but it's just this transition, and it's just hard. And I think I'm tempted to work, and I'm tempted because there's plenty that I could be doing. There's plenty of tasks and things that I could be taking care of. I'm tempted to work. I'm tempted to isolate. I'm tempted to just not. In a very toxic way, to not feel and to not allow myself to feel and be honest. And so I resist the urge to completely disconnect and disengage, because I know that I need those around me to love me. I need to continue to lean on God, continue to be in prayer. And then, you know, with it being the holidays and stuff too, it's just like that added layer of kind of just like family. Oh wait, family shift. But I also on the other extreme of it, I don't know, like there is this piece, just because I'm happy that my grandfather is no longer suffering, because he wasn't in pain. He just wasn't very as vocal about it, and like it wasn't as obvious, but you could tell he was in pain. And another interesting fact that I've had to work through and continue to work through is my great grandmother lived to be 104. So we watched her just be independent, live by herself, take care of herself. So I believe I think my mom said she was about to be 104, but it was months before she passed that somebody even started taking care of her. Like she lived by herself for the longest. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, what? Well, I can see it with my eyes, so naturally that means that it's possible. When in reality, my grandfather who died at 85, I'm like, he had like 20 more years left. And my grandmother passing last year, I mean, they'd been together for 50 plus years. They'd been together longer than they were apart. So there's so many elements and factors to be considered, and there's so many things to process and work through that I'm still working through. I mean, this is fresh, but it's so interesting. I mean, and as a Christian, of course, there's a piece, of course, of the realization and understanding that my grandfather's in heaven, with my grandmother and with my with God, with Jesus. And so there's a piece there, but there's still obviously a sadness of, okay, but they're not here anymore. And, you know, that's kind of selfish. Because the selfishness is, oh, I wanted you to meet my husband. I wanted you to meet my kids. I wanted you to be there. That's selfish, right? But he left such a legacy. I mean, he was the reason why I went to college. He co-signed all my loans so I could go to school. And I wouldn't be here without him. Like, he's the closest, like, father figure person that I've lost. When I was 7, my stepfather passed away, but I didn't understand it because I was 7, and he was, like, really overprotective, so it was hard for me to process and connect the way that one would have maybe hoped. But with this, is like, I don't know, it's just, and I guess, and I also didn't think it would hit me this hard. I don't know, you know, I didn't think it would. But grief, man, and life and transitions and shiftings and stuff. I don't know. Allowing myself to feel and working through, and even earlier I wasn't gonna, having like a low moment, and then like my friend called me and she was just like, hey, and my family's been touching base and talk to my mom every day, talk to my cousin often, both my cousins, all of my cousins, family's been reaching out. We've all really been trying to support each other because this was a tough loss for everybody. This is hard for everyone. And I don't know, today I just didn't want to. Like, I was just like, yeah, it's fine. I'll just work because I can get caught up on work stuff. But I just didn't want to. Well, God laid it on her heart to call me, and I almost didn't answer naturally. But then I answered, and I was able to kind of talk through and cry through my feelings, and that was very therapeutic. But it's like this. It's like you have to, like, for me, it's like I have to force myself to not do what I want to do, like do the opposite of what I want to do. What I want to do is isolate, not speak, cover up, just not. But then it's like, no, but you have to allow yourself to work through and shift through and really process through. And even with my therapist, she talks about grief as something, it's like a rock where it's like huge at first, and then eventually it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and you carry it differently. And everybody carries it differently, but eventually if you actually allow yourself to work through and process through, it becomes small enough that you still have it with you. I think she's like, you keep it like in your pocket or something, but it's not as like heavy. And I think that's so true, because I never dealt with death like this. Like, a lot of like older relatives passed, and my grandfather was 85. But again, even just thinking about like the 4 losses last year and then the 1 this year, and really when I say 1 this year, I'm definitely not even paying homage to like all of like the pandemic and losses and that sort of thing. I'm grateful for his legacy, grateful for his life. I'm grateful for the example that he and my grandmother showed us, the love that they created, the way that they raised intelligent members of our family, the way that they loved unconditionally, the way that he gave, so generous. And you see that and you're like, wow. And it's just beautiful, you know? And so I'm still processing, I'm still working through, I'm still talking and taking the moments and emotions as they come, but I'm grateful for him and just so much. Yeah. So, with that being said, I think I'm going to end our time together here. I hope you were able to take something away from the video. Keep me and my family in your prayers, but y'all know how I feel. If you worship anybody but Jesus, feel free to leave me out of that conversation. I'm good. And yeah, I hope you guys are well. And I'll see you next week. All right, bye.